Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Drive Conversions with Personalization. My name is Mario Kiriakou. I'm a managing partner at Ratio Partners, a UK digital agency. So just a few ground rules before we kick off today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded, and I will share a link to this in the next couple of days, so you should have a copy of this by Friday. If you would like to ask questions, we should have time at the end of today's presentation to do a brief Q&A. If you have a question, please write your question on the toolbar on the right-hand side of the screen, and I will endeavour to answer it at the end of today's presentation. So just a quick overview on who we are in case you don't know myself or Ratio. We're an optimization first agency. By that we mean we focus and work with clients in the UK on identifying how they can optimize their digital experience for their end clients to support your business goals. So things like conversion rate optimization, testing, everything is focused towards how can we create a better experience to drive more value for your end clients. So let's get straight into the presentation, because that's what we're here for today. So everyone knows what a conversion is, but I'm just going to start with what is a conversion. I mean, the topic of today's presentation, how can we drive conversions with personalization, is a little bit of a misnomer, and I just want to talk a little bit around what is a conversion, because we work with years of experience working with a varied type of different clients, also being client side, and one of the things that always comes up is defining a conversion seems quite simple. It's almost like asking someone what is a lead and then getting back 30 different responses. So defining what a conversion is actually super important, but actually quite difficult, because it could vary depending on stakeholders. Even within the marketing team, if you have marketers focused on things like email marketing or content creation, a conversion for them will be focused around what they do in terms of marketing, whereas someone from a sales perspective might be focused on something further down the funnel. So defining what a conversion is super important. We like to wrap, when we're looking to define a conversion, we use the theory of is there a measurable benefit and impact for your end clients, but also for yourselves as an organization. And for us, if we can identify an activity that supports both your customers and supporting your business plans, then that for us is the definition of a conversion. And what do we mean by personalization? Now, hopefully everyone on the call today, due to signing up for today's webinar, has an interest or familiarity with digital personalization. Perhaps you've started personalizing already. Perhaps you're investigating the tools that enable you to do this. Maybe you've started already and you're looking to build out a more structured plan. Wherever you are on your personalization journey, I'd like to take a step back and just try and define what we mean by personalization. And it is relatively simple. When we talk about personalization, we always refer to Amazon in the good sense and the bad sense. In the good sense that if you look at the Amazon website as an experience, it's looking to identify key segments, looking to identify contextual triggers based on what you've looked at, how you've engaged with them as an organization, and serving something relevant to that individual. And that could be as simple as just personalizing one component or one banner on a page, right through to personalizing every component on the page, subsequent pages, repeat visits, and then tailoring that experience for email marketing. But the crux of it is trying to understand what contextual touch points do we hold on our clients. How can we use data to understand the different segments that we have, whether we can look at campaign traffic, look at whether we have an account-based targeting program, where we can identify people from X company. For one of our clients, identifying segments based on time of day of visit is a key scenario. It will vary for different clients and obviously for different organizations. Every organization is unique, but at the crux of it is trying to identify as much information on our customers as possible that allows us to begin to create groupings of customers and of segments that we can begin to define what hypotheses do we need to align with these segments in order to deliver a better, improved, optimized, and ultimately personalized experience. There are types of conversions. Not all conversions are end of funnel, so whether we're looking at e-commerce or non-retail. So for e-commerce, time and time again, sales are defined as conversions, and that's the case. And for non-retail, especially for B2B organizations or anyone which is utilizing web forms across their website to capture data, form completions are, I suppose, a hard conversion rate. But it's also lots of other softer as well as other conversion rates which lead up towards this final sell or final form completion, from adding items to basket, collecting emails, requesting callbacks from prospective customers, getting people to sign up for your email subscription lists, applying for jobs. One of the things we've seen come up increasingly is HR, the career side. For lots of organizations, recruiting the right people, recruiting the best talent is a key platform for their growth. So some of people we're working with actually put a lot of conversion rate points around the career side. But it's understanding what is your main conversion point, but also understanding all the sub-conversion points. Because when we're looking to define a personalization plan, what we want to do is begin to build up those hypotheses against these different conversion types. And that leads me on to defining a conversion hierarchy. Not all conversion points are made equal. And one of the things that I hear quite often is, especially when people are looking to define a personalization plan, is where do we start? What should we look to do? Especially with organizations which have quite complex websites, lots of different target audiences, thousands of content items, lots and lots of pages. It can be quite difficult to say, okay, what do we need to focus on? Where do we start? And the simplest way actually to look to do is to map out a hierarchy. And of course, it's impossible to have a one-size-fits-all hierarchy which I can share with everyone because it's tailored for your unique business requirements. But ultimately, it's to look at defining what is your end conversion goal and then looking at all the sub-points that support that. So elements such as watching videos, clicking on emails, these may not necessarily be defined as hard conversion points, but all these individual touch points serve towards guiding someone to an ultimate destination. And we want to define this because this will help to structure our future plans, our future personalization plans in defining what we want to do. So always start from the top and work backwards. And you could do this as simply on your own or pull together a team, get into a meeting room, bunch of post-it notes on the wall and begin to map it out. But personalization is simply just one tactic. We never pretend that personalization is the be-all or end-all. As a marketer, you will have dozens of different tactics and strategies that you could be deploying at any one time. Personalization is one potential tactic that you could be deploying. It may not be the right tactic for where you are at this moment in time as an organization. It may be something you want to do further down the line. The key thing is to identify is it going to drive value and where does it sit? But lots of people I speak to are really interested in doing personalization because it's interesting, it's cool. We can potentially see the value you can create, but at the same time, we're not sure whether we want to be doing it or where does it sit. And the way I always describe it is for me, it fits into the center of what we have on the screen at the moment. It fits into the center of your analytics, customer research, your business planning, UX. If you're doing things like a website redesign or looking to update your, do a UX review, for me, personalization combines with that. There's no point doing a website redesign unless you're thinking about the end point of I'm going to build a personalization plan, therefore I'm going to be delivering different target audience groups, different segmentations, different experiences, different messages. Let's build it into the UX part of the review. From a business perspective, it's about understanding what is it as a business you want to achieve, what are your goals, what are your objectives, and how can personalization as a tactic serve to support the overall business goals of driving growth or reducing churn or reducing customer complaints. And it also feeds into analytics and personalization are one side of the same reverse of the same coin. So personalization is only as good as the data you hold. If we don't have good data on how our customers are interacting with you as an organization, if we haven't got analytics set up correctly, it's going to be very difficult to define a personalization plan that's going to be optimized for driving growth going forward. One of the things that comes up quite often is when you're looking to sit down to define your personalization conversion plan, is defining what we want to do, defining those hypotheses. And one of the things that come up quite often are people come up with a bunch of ideas, their opinions, and they're great, but opinions which are not mapped against qualitative and quantitative data risks the danger of not being optimized for the greatest opportunity. And by that we mean, if it hasn't been mapped against something that you know, mapped against how your customers are interacting with you, and it's not been backed up with hard evidence to state that if we do X, it will deliver Y, then it's going to be difficult to deliver a personalization plan that's going to really deliver you an uplift on your conversion rates. So from quantitative, looking at hard data, a couple of basic steps. So investigate your analytics data, look at what you've set up. The majority of people we work with use GA, but you also may be working with other tools such as Omniture. You might have a bunch of other analytics tools set up. Have a look at what you have a look at the tracking is set up correctly. And by correctly, we mean define what data you want to pull out of the system. So define your custom segments and set up bespoke reports within your analytics platform so we can begin to collect data on how your prospects and customers are interacting with you as an organization. And that data then will begin to allow us to define the size of the opportunity. So if we come up with a bunch of personalization hypotheses, we can put a predictor against those personalization ideas to state, if we do this, we believe it's going to generate an uplift because of the data. And as well as the qualitative data, sometimes we can be too data driven, obsessed with just looking at say, for example, analytics data, but it only tells us one side of the story. The other side of the story is actually stepping out of data and engaging with your customers. So things like doing direct customer interviews, sending surveys to your clients via email for feedback, setting up Hotjar for heat mapping, so we begin to understand how people are interacting with your website. Perhaps people are interacting in a way that you're not expected. They're clicking through on things which are not clickable, or doing something which begins to give you insight into how people would like to interact with you as an organization, because all of this will begin to allow us to come up with hypotheses which are grounded in some form of customer data. Hypothesis generation. This is something that we always love doing with clients because it's actually fun. So the question always comes up: what do we need to do? Where should we start? What should we begin to personalize against and for whom? And for us, this is a simple workshop where we could begin to create a list of hypotheses. And they're very simple. It has to map to three elements: the variable, the result, and the rationale. So the variable, identifying opportunities based on the data we collected, what we talked about on the previous slide. So for example, perhaps your homepage is your biggest traffic driver and it's coming from a bunch of different segments. Let's have a look at things like the homepage banner as a really simple example. If we were to change or swap out the headline banner for banner B with a different messaging for a specific customer segment, what would the result be? So what would we be looking to drive? email signups, click-throughs, video views, content downloads, but mapping a hard tangible against that and the rationale for it. And you begin to map it out in an Excel sheet. And I've got a template which, if anyone would like, ping me, let me know, and I'll send it round to you after the webinar. But in effect, you'll begin to map out an Excel sheet and begin to prioritize all your different personalization testing scenarios and identifying which ones in which order and the reason why we should be deploying this in the next month or 2 months or 3 months. Using funnels to support conversions. This is something which came up recently on a project actually. Funnels are something well used. I mean, whether you're B2B or B2C, it's a common way of structuring your marketing efforts. But from a personalization perspective, what we could begin to do is create custom funnels within Google Analytics. Now, you could do this whether you're an e-commerce brand or a non-e-commerce brand, but identifying those hard, measurable conversion points on your website, such as form completions, basket checkout, visiting a site, watching a video, for example, and creating a custom funnel within something like GA, or if you're using tools such as Cycle, you can create a custom report, but beginning to provide some sort of structure and hierarchy around these key data points on your website, so we can begin collecting data, because this will allow us to then define hypotheses against these subcategories. So for example, for the e-commerce example on the screen, we may want to come up with 5 or 10 different personalization hypotheses on optimizing the checkout process, or adding products to cart, or adding relevant additional products based on their purchase history. But it will allow us to structure our ideas workshops based around these individual touch points, and then we can then measure the output in these custom funnels. This is an odd one. When we're talking about driving conversions via personalization, internal blockers actually is something that comes up quite often, because you can have the best will in the world to deploy something or do something, but as we all know, sometimes within a business it can be a bunch of things that can prevent you from deploying something. Other projects have a higher priority, something which comes up quite often, but there's also a bunch of things. So I'm just going to read through the ones which come up quite often. So things like times and resources. Now, personalization, if it's not something you're doing now, the question may come up from the business is, why should we be doing this? What's the benefit? Why should we deploy resources? And that could be a combination of people and budget to do something like this when we haven't done it before. But what's it going to give me as an organization? And that's something which comes up time and time again. So the way to work around that is building up that business case. Now, the reason why we say we need to collect data and hard data is so we can begin to use that data to identify the opportunity, so we can begin to build up that business case. Sometimes you may discover that perhaps you don't have the data internal ability to analyze this type of data, or set up this in the first place to pull that data in. But by working through this as a checklist, you'll be able to identify what potential blockers we may have as an organization that will prevent us from deploying personalization. One of the things that sometimes comes up is platform skills. So if you're using tools such as Cycle or Optimizely or VWO or Test and Target, there are a bunch of tools out there, but understanding how the tool works, understanding the platform, understanding how it's been integrated into your website, understanding what you can or cannot do is important, because you can identify what you could do reasonably with minimal resources, as opposed to what you could do if you had unlimited resources. So digital maturity. Now, I don't pretend that anyone who's looking to do personalization is going to do everything you could do within month one. The truth is that's not going to happen. Like with any marketing tactic, such as deploying marketing automation, building in rich email nurture plans, potentially there's an awful lot you could do, but you're not necessarily going to do it from day one. So we work with the digital maturity model, which we have on the screen in front of you, and it allows us to define what we can or cannot do now as opposed to in the future. So if you're looking to deploy personalization and you want to understand, okay, where should we start and where could we get to, we always look to define a couple of key things. Visitors, prospects, engaged customers, active customers, and lapsed customers. Now, you can map this to your own business model, but this covers quite a lot of people. Now, we always say if you're going to look to start with personalization, within the first couple of months, you should focus on visitors and prospective customers. The reason why we focus on that area is because we most likely already have our systems set up to track what is a prospective customer, whereas tracking who is an existing customer of ours could be quite difficult. It may require integration with a different system because that different system holds that data on who is a current subscriber or a current customer of your organization, and that's something you might want to work towards. So we always say to start on visitors and to define a couple of things, so tactics and strategy. So when kicking off, we want to define elements such as who we're looking to target, so defining those personas, defining those segments, looking at your content. Personalization requires content. It doesn't require as much content as people think it does. You don't need to rewrite everything you have. It's probably just a question of running an audit on what content you have and matching it against the segments that you wish to deploy personalization against, and then tweaking accordingly. So it could be as simple as tweaking headlines on banners as opposed to rewriting white papers or rewriting blog posts and lots of different content. So focus on that. Also look at defining your objectives as business. So what do you want to achieve within the first couple of months? Perhaps we want to focus on areas such as converting first-time visitors or delivering a better experience for returning visitors. Identify your risk and dependencies. Some of this is technology related. Do we have the right tools and system in place? Is the systems integrated? Are they set up correctly? Are we collecting the right data? It also might be around people. Do we have the right people? Do we have the right resources in place? You may be super busy as a marketing team and the best will in the world. You may not have the additional bandwidth to deploy an extra tactic such as personalization. And then look at your tactics. So as a marketing team, you'll be doing a bunch of different stuff to drive incoming traffic. So you'll be running paid channels, you may be doing paid advertising via AdWords or YouTube advertising or social media advertising. Look at what channels you have that's driving traffic to your website, understand what contextual information you have about there. If you're running specific campaigns on Google AdWords, are they targeting different groups? How have you set up your AdWords campaigns? Because that will allow us to come up with a bunch of hypotheses about optimizing or personalizing against the keywords triggered in paid campaigns. But as you move forward, you may want to define what you want to do next. So we always say put in place a 3-month plan. So over 3 months, what do we want to see as an uplift from personalization? Again, initially it's a guess, but it's a guess based against the data you've collected, which is why we say use data to define the highest opportunity. And that opportunity will allow you to define what your plan should be, what it should look like, and also begin to set some goals so you can begin to report back to the business. Going forward, if you want to do something more complex, we always look at things like existing customers as being more complex. If you're a B2B client, this may be something about integration with CRM systems. Your CRM system may be your single source of truth for your organization. It may hold all your data on who is a customer. If the idea eventually is to personalize and optimize the on-site conversion rates for existing customers to get them to do more, come back, spend more, it may require that integration with different systems and therefore mapping what we want to do on-site. So we work with a bunch of clients who use Sitecore as their main CMS, and they look to integrate tools such as CRM. And we have the option to do two-way personalization based on data held within a third-party tool. So in other words, a visitor comes to your website, query a third-party tool to say, is this person a customer based on information we have on them, and trigger a personalized scenario to make them do X action. But initially, there's a bunch of things we want to do on. So we need to pick something. So pick the area to focus on initially. And the way we define this is ask yourself and ask your business, what are your priorities in the next 1 or 2 quarters? So we were speaking to a banking client a couple of weeks ago, and one of their main priorities was to reduce customer complaints, and that was actually a bit of a surprise for us. It wasn't driving new customers, it wasn't upselling existing customers or cross promotion. It was primarily how can we use the website and the mobile website and their apps to reduce customer complaints. That was the single biggest requirement, and it was quite good because it allowed us to focus all your personalization hypotheses on this one area. So if you're going to do anything after today's webinar and go away and think about what you want to do, identify what is most valuable to you as a business at this moment in time. It may be a couple of things, but try and pick one. It's going to be very difficult to try and create a personalization plan for all your priorities initially. We want to be focused. So pick one, and then let's look to define 4, 5, or 6 different scenarios linked to data, and let's look to deploy quickly and get some data back to see how this is impacting our conversion rate efforts. And don't forget testing. We talk about personalization, but for me, personalization and A/B testing are very similar areas. I mean, but one of the areas where they're not similar is when we talk to people and they're looking to do personalization, there's a tendency to look to deploy personalized scenarios and experiences for clients, but not have a measurement plan around it. So one of the things we would always encourage you to do is if you're looking to deploy personalization, make sure you have a way of A/B testing your different personalization scenarios, because unless you do that, unless you have a control and a variation, an A and a B, it's going to be very difficult to know which set of messaging, which scenario, which imagery is enabling you to drive those additional conversions. We always want to have the 2 variants. So if you're looking to deploy this and looking to show to the business that personalization drives conversion rates, make sure you've built an A/B testing plan into each of your hypotheses so we can begin to define which one works best and which one doesn't, and then we can focus on those. Personalization framework. So working backwards. So focus on business impact. So if you're going to go away after today, look to understand what your business goals are. They may be very different to what you're focusing on within the marketing team. Sometimes we can focus on the day-to-day stuff in marketing and lose sight of perhaps what the overall business wants to do. So try and set up internal workshops with key stakeholders, get marketing in, get sales in, get HR in, if recruitment is a key area. It doesn't really matter who. What matters is that you have various people from around the business to try and understand and define what it is you want to achieve as a business, because then we can begin to map that against how digital could potentially support that. Look to build a measurement framework. There's no point in deploying personalization if we have no way of measuring the output. And the measurement framework will vary from industry to industry, business to business. So look to define what are the key KPIs and metrics which are relevant for you. And then the second step, look to set these up so we can begin to collect the data. And the third part, if we're collecting data, we've got our KPIs, we've got a measurement framework in place, interrogate your data, look to identify the highest value opportunities. If reducing customer churn is your highest value opportunity, if that is likely to lead to greater customer value over a period of time, then let's focus all our hypotheses around personalization, around optimizing that one area initially, and then we can then begin to work down through the different areas of opportunities that you identify from your data. And then when you're looking to build your plan, don't do it on your own. If you have a larger team, put them together, brainstorm your ideas in a meeting room. Use a tool such as Excel or post-it notes on the wall. Get different people with different perspectives into the room to discuss what you could potentially do on your website or your mobile website or on your app to deliver a better experience to increase your conversions. And there's always a technical element to personalization. There's a couple of questions to ask yourself. If you're looking to deploy personalization, does it require any development? And by that I mean, if you've defined a bunch of hypotheses for your highest value opportunity and segment, have a look at how your page is structured and ask yourself, do we need to do any sort of page template updates? Do we need to do any sort of design changes or component rebuilds in order to deploy or deliver this new experience for a client? And if you're doing things like UX updates or website design changes, you may want to think about how personalization can feed through on these sort of design changes. Then ask yourself, who's going to set up your personalization scenarios? Do they require any training? Do they have additional time to set it up? Is there any specific platform experience or expertise they require around whatever tool you're using? And then ask yourself, how long will any technical work take? If the feedback from your internal development team or external IT agency or development agency you use says it may take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever time it takes, ask yourself, okay, it's going to take this amount of time to set up this personalized scenario. Is it worth the effort initially, or are there lower hanging fruit opportunities where it will generate high value or high return, but doesn't require 3 months worth of development or a month's worth of development or massive change? Because ultimately you want to deploy something quick that generates value, allows you to collect data so you can begin to build a business case to do deploy more personalized scenarios or request more budget or whatever it is as a business that you need to put in place to embed this into your organization. So that's me. Thank you for listening. We've gone right up to just a couple of minutes over the half-past mark. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. So I'll have a quick check to see if we have anything come through. Okay, we had a question come in. Hi Mario, quick question. What bespoke segments should we create in Google Analytics to get that data that we can then use for personalization? This will vary depending on your business. So if you are, I'll give you an example. If you're a B2B customer, so if you're a B2B organization, the segments you may want to set up within Google Analytics may revolve around measuring how many your goals completed against form completions, so number of visits to a form, how many people completed a form, what was the dropout of a form, what was the conversion rate of the form. So ask yourself, what are your main, as a marketer, what are you looking to do each day? What are those the things you're looking to convert? And really, that it's those areas that we're going to look to create a custom segment, a custom report within Google Analytics. Hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to send me an email afterwards. So let's have a look, see if there's any other questions come through. Okay, looks like that was the last question. So as I said, today's session was recorded. I will send around a copy of the recording in a couple of days along with a copy of today's slides. If you have any questions, my email is up on the screen and happy to answer anything which we didn't cover today. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of today.